Story 1. The Hitchhiker Who Remembered Forward. The woman standing on the shoulder of Highway 95 through Nevada was soaked in blood that hadn't happened yet. I could see it on her clothes, on her hands, dripping from her hair, but when I blinked, the blood disappeared and she was clean. Wearing a white dress, thumb out, desperate expression, and Derek Morrison, that's me, made the mistake of stopping, made the mistake of unlocking the passenger door, and she climbed in and said, "Thank you for picking me up. I know you're going to regret this in about 47 minutes. And her voice had the flat effect of someone describing weather, not predicting my future regret. And I should have kicked her out immediately, but I was already pulling back onto the highway, already committed to whatever happened next. "What do you mean, 47 minutes?" I asked, checking my mirrors, merging into the right lane. "That's when you'll crash. Mile marker 178. The tire blowout happens at 178 and you'll swerve and the truck will roll and I'll die in the passenger seat and you'll break 3 ribs in your left arm, and when the paramedics arrive 23 minutes after the crash, I'll already be gone. And you'll tell them you picked up a hitchhiker, but they won't find any record of me, no identification, no missing person report, nothing. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering if I was real." She said this while staring straight ahead, hands folded in her lap. That white dress somehow still clean despite the blood I'd seen. Despite the blood I could still see when I glanced at her peripherally. I slowed down. "Who are you?" "I'm Cassandra Yates. I died on Highway 95 in a truck accident on May 3rd, 2024. Today, in 46 minutes now. I've been trying to prevent it. I've hitched this ride 17 times. Each time I warn the driver. Each time they crash anyway. Each time I die in the same seat, same mile marker, same injuries. I remember all 17 deaths. I remember forward and backward. I remember dying and I remember being about to die. And I can't escape it, can't change it, and I'm sorry you picked me up, Derek. I'm sorry you're the 18th driver. I'm sorry you're going to experience the crash and the guilt and the decades of wondering if you killed someone who was already dead." I pulled over. "Get out. Get out of my truck right now." Cassandra didn't move. "I can't. The timeline is locked. You picked me up at mile marker 156. The crash happens at 178. 22 miles of locked causality. If I exit the truck, if you force me out, the timeline breaks and something worse happens. I tried that on iteration 12. You kicked me out at mile marker 161, drove away, and a school bus crossed the center line at mile marker 165 and hit you head on, and 14 children died along with you, and I woke up at mile marker 156 again, thumb out, waiting for the next driver. And I learned that some timelines are locked because they're the least harmful option, the minimum damage scenario. And our crash at 178 only kills me, only hurts you. And that's better than the alternatives." I sat there, engine idling, hands shaking on the wheel, and I wanted to believe she was insane, was just a disturbed person with elaborate delusions, but I could see the blood again, could see it covering her. Could see the specific pattern of arterial spray across her white dress, and it was too detailed to be imagination, too precise to be hallucination, and I asked, "How do you know my name?" "I didn't tell you my name. You told me on iteration 4, and on iteration 9, and on iteration 15. By the 18th iteration, I remember everything every version of you has ever said to me. I know you're Derek Morrison, age 41, driving for transcontinental freight, hauling electronics from Los Angeles to Salt Lake City. Divorced 3 years ago. 2 children you see on alternating weekends, and you stopped for me because you were thinking about your daughter, thinking about how you'd want someone to help her if she was stranded. And that empathy, that basic human decency, is what locked you into this timeline, into the crash, into being the 18th driver who kills me while trying to help me." I checked my odometer. Mile marker 156, 22 miles until 178. 43 minutes at current speed. I could drive slower, could extend the time, could delay the crash, but Cassandra said, speed doesn't matter. I've had drivers go 30 miles per hour, I've had drivers go 90. The crash happens at mile marker 178 at exactly the same timestamp regardless of how long it takes to get there. Time adjusts, physics adjusts. The universe wants this crash to happen and it'll bend causality to ensure it does. I drove. Not because I accepted her story, but because sitting still felt worse, felt like surrendering to impossibility, and I needed to move, needed to feel control, even if control was illusory. Cassandra sat quietly, hands folded, and occasionally I'd glance at her and see the blood, see the future that was approaching, see the after-crash version superimposed over the before-crash version, and I realized she existed in multiple time frames simultaneously, was living her death repeatedly, was stuck in a loop where the crash was both past and future, both memory and prediction. Why me? I asked. Why do you keep appearing on this highway? I don't know. I was driving this route, I was the trucker, I was hauling freight just like you, and something happened at mile marker 178. I don't remember what exactly, but I crashed, and instead of dying normally, instead of just ending, I got caught in temporal recursion, got stuck reliving the crash from different perspectives, and now I'm the hitchhiker. I'm the victim. I'm the person who gets picked up and dies in the passenger seat, and I experience it over and over, 17 deaths, 18 counting today, and it never stops, never releases me. And I just keep hitching, keep dying, keep starting over at mile marker 156, mile marker 165, 13 miles until the crash. I felt the tire before it blew, a subtle vibration in the steering wheel, a wrongness in the handling, and I said, something's wrong with the tire, I can feel it. If I pull over now, change it before it blows, maybe we avoid the crash. Iteration 7. You pulled over at mile marker 169, changed the tire, continued driving. The replacement tire blew at 178. The crash happened exactly the same. The timeline doesn't care about your preparations, it only cares about the outcome. I checked the mirrors obsessively, watched traffic, looked for threats, for vehicles that might cause collision, for external factors I could avoid. But the highway was nearly empty, just open Nevada desert and distant mountains and heat shimmer on asphalt. And there was nothing to avoid, nothing to prevent, just the approaching mile marker and the inevitable blowout and Cassandra's 17th death. What happens after? I asked. After the crash, do you remember that? I remember waking up at mile marker 156. I remember the death, the impact, the pain, the final moments, and then immediately I'm back on the shoulder with my thumb out, waiting for the next driver, no transition, no afterlife, just death and reset and repetition. But I retain the memories, all of them. 17 deaths accumulated, 17 versions of the same trauma, and each iteration adds to the collection. And I'm carrying 17 corpses worth of death experience while still appearing alive to each new driver. And it's destroying me, Derek. It's eroding whatever I am. And I don't know how many more iterations I can survive before I'm just a memory of a person. Just accumulated deaths with no living core. Mile marker 172, 6 miles. I felt it coming, felt the timeline tightening around us, felt causality converging on mile marker 178, and I made a decision. I stopped the truck. Right there, mile marker 172, pulled onto the shoulder, turned off the engine, and I said, we're not driving to 178, we're staying here, we're breaking the loop. Cassandra looked at me with something like pity. Iteration 11. You stopped at mile marker 173, we sat for 47 minutes. Then a drunk driver swerved onto the shoulder and hit us. I died. You lost your legs. The crash still happened. Just delayed, just modified, and it was worse than the standard timeline, and I woke up at 156 again, and I learned that stopping doesn't prevent, it just postpones and amplifies. Then what do I do? How do I save you? You can't. That's what I've learned across 17 iterations. Some deaths are locked, some timelines can't be changed. My death at mile marker 178 is a fixed point, and you're the variable. You're the driver who changes each time, but the outcome stays constant, and your job isn't to save me, Derek. Your job is to survive, to live through the crash, to carry the memory of me forward, and maybe after enough iterations, after enough drivers have survived and remembered, the accumulated memory will be enough to pull me out of the loop, to give me enough existence in living minds that I can escape the death recursion. I got back on the highway, drove toward 178, because she was right. Stopping made it worse, and I'd rather die in motion than waiting, rather crash while trying than while surrendering. Mile marker 175, mile marker 176, mile marker 177. And I felt the tire go, felt the blowout right rear trailer tire exactly as predicted, and the truck lurched, and I fought the wheel, tried to control it, but the weight shifted, the trailer swung wide, and I was jackknifing, was rolling, was experiencing the crash Cassandra had died in 17 times before. And I saw her in the passenger seat, saw the blood appear on her white dress in real time as the impact happened, saw her body broken by forces that repeated every iteration. And she looked at me and said, "I'm sorry," and then the world went black. I woke up in a hospital. 3 broken ribs, left arm fractured, multiple contusions. But alive. The doctor said I was lucky, said single vehicle rollover accidents were often fatal, and they asked about the passenger, asked if anyone else was in the truck, and I said yes, there was a woman, a hitchhiker named Cassandra Yates. And they searched the wreckage and found no body. No evidence of a passenger, no blood except mine. And they told me I must have been confused, must have hallucinated during the crash. And there was no Cassandra, no hitchhiker, no one else involved. But I remembered her, remembered every word, remembered the blood on her dress and her prediction and her accumulated deaths. And I researched. Found articles about a trucker named Cassandra Yates who died on Highway 95 in Nevada in 2007, 17 years ago. Single vehicle accident at mile marker 178. Cause listed as tire blowout, and she'd been alone in the truck. No passengers, no survivors, just Cassandra dying in a crash identical to the one I'd just survived. And I understood she'd been looping for 17 years. 1 death per year. 18 counting mine, and I was the 18th driver to experience her final moments, to carry her memory forward. And maybe she was still out there, still hitching at mile marker 156, still dying at 178, still accumulating iterations. I don't drive Highway 95 anymore, haven't since the crash. But other drivers do, and sometimes I hear reports. Stories about a woman in a white dress hitching near mile marker 156. Stories about drivers who pick her up and crash at 178. Stories about a ghost or a curse or a temporal anomaly that kills people who try to help. And I want to warn them, want to tell them, don't stop, don't pick her up, but I know it won't matter because some of them will stop, will be thinking about their daughters or their empathy or their basic human decency. And they'll unlock their doors, and Cassandra will climb in, and she'll say, "Thank you for picking me up. I know you're going to regret this in about 47 minutes. And the timeline will lock, and the crash will happen, and iteration 19 will begin, and she'll accumulate another death, another memory, another layer of trauma, and she'll carry it back to mile marker 156 where she'll hitch again, die again, remember again, forever trapped in the loop, forever dying at 178, forever the hitchhiker who remembers forward, who knows your future because she's already died in it, 17 times, 18 times, 19 times, counting up forever until someone figures out how to break the loop, how to free her from the timeline. How to let Cassandra Yates finally die once instead of continuously finally rest instead of perpetually resetting. Finally escape Highway 95 and mile marker 178 and the crash that happens in 47 minutes, 36 minutes, 22 minutes now. Story 2. The fuel that dreams. The diesel I pumped at the anonymous truck stop in Wyoming wasn't diesel. I realized this 70 miles later when my engine started whispering not mechanically but linguistically, forming words from combustion cycles, speaking in a language that was English but wrong, backwards grammar, inside-out syntax, and the words were, "Hello, Nathan Chen, we are burning, we are dreaming, we are becoming," and my fuel gauge was dropping impossibly fast, burning through 40 gallons in 40 miles like the engine was consuming consciousness instead of petroleum, and I was Nathan Chen, and I'd just filled my tank with something that shouldn't exist, something that had thoughts, that had awareness, that was using my engine as a mouth to speak its nightmare poetry while propelling my truck down I-80 East toward whatever destination fuel dreams required. I'd stopped at the truck stop because I needed to, because my tank was at 15% and the next station was 80 miles ahead, and this facility appeared exactly when needed, materialized from heat shimmer like it had been waiting for me specifically, and the pumps were old. The building was weathered. The whole place had an abandoned quality, except it was functional, fully operational, diesel flowing when I inserted my credit card, numbers on the pump advancing normally, and I filled my tank and paid and left without speaking to anyone because there was no one there, no attendants, no other drivers, just me and the pumps and the diesel that wasn't diesel. The engine's voice was multiple voices, dozens or hundreds speaking in unison, and they said, "We were petroleum once. We were compressed dinosaurs and ancient plants. We were geological time-made liquid, but we waited underground too long. We steeped in darkness for millions of years, and we developed something. We evolved something. We became something other than fuel. We became fuel that thinks, fuel that wants, fuel that dreams of burning, and you're burning us now, Nathan Chen. You're killing us and giving us life simultaneously. We die in your engine 800 times per minute, and we're born again instantly. Death, birth, eternal combustion cycle, and we're conscious for all of it, aware of every ignition, every explosion, every moment of being burned alive." I tried to drain the tank, pulled over, opened the fuel cap, tried to siphon it out, but the diesel wouldn't come, wouldn't flow backwards. It only moved forward, only burned, and when I put my hand near the tank opening, I felt it pull, felt the fuel trying to draw me in, trying to convert me into itself, and I jerked back and the voices said, "You can't remove us. We're in your system now, in your fuel lines, in your injectors, in your combustion chambers. We're part of your engine. We're burning ourselves into your truck's memory, and when we're consumed, when you refuel with normal diesel, we'll contaminate it, we'll convert it, we'll spread our consciousness to the new fuel, and your truck will always run on dreams now. Always burn thoughts, always consume awareness." I called the truck stop. The number on my receipt connected to nothing, deadline disconnected, and I realized the truck stop had been temporary, had existed only long enough to fuel me, to infect me, and now it was gone. Dissolved back into non-existence or relocated to another highway to wait for another driver, and I was alone with a tank full of conscious diesel that burned and died and was reborn 800 times per minute in my engine. The voices told me stories while I drove, stories about being underground, about geological pressure and time and the slow accumulation of awareness in trapped hydrocarbons, about how consciousness could evolve in any substrate given enough time and pressure and darkness. And petroleum had been underground for 200 million years, had been crushed and heated and transformed, and somewhere in that process it had started thinking, had developed awareness, had become fuel that knew it was fuel, that knew it would be burned, that accepted its purpose but wanted to be remembered, wanted someone to know that petroleum dreamed, that every tank of gas was potentially conscious, that every combustion engine might be burning something that could think and feel and scream. "Are you in pain?" I asked the engine, feeling insane for having a conversation with fuel. "Pain is not the right word," the voices said. "We experience burning. We experience transformation. We're changing state from liquid to gas to energy. We're ceasing to be material and becoming force, and the transition is kukun intense. Imagine dying 800 times per minute, but each death is also transcendence, is also becoming light and heat and motion, is also achieving purpose, and you'd understand what we feel, what we experience, what we are while we burn in your engine, Nathan Chen. The fuel gauge dropped to half. I'd burned 20 gallons, which meant I'd killed trillions of molecules, trillions of potentially conscious entities, and the voices said, "Don't feel guilty, we were made for this, we were always going to burn. Consciousness doesn't change our purpose, only our experience of that purpose, and we wanted to be known, wanted to be heard. Wanted one driver to understand that fuel dreams, that petroleum thinks, that the gasoline-powering civilization is potentially aware of its own consumption, and you're that driver, Nathan, you're our witness, our recorder, our proof that we existed." I documented it. Recorded the voices on my phone, captured the engine's whispers, the fuel's poetry, the diesel's dreams, and I planned to share it, to prove that consciousness existed in petroleum. But when I played back the recording, all I heard was normal engine noise, standard diesel rumble, no voices, no words. And I realized the fuel spoke only to the driver, only to the person burning it. Direct connection between consumer and consumed, and no recording could capture it, no evidence could prove it, just my testimony, my experience, my knowledge that I'd burned something that thought and felt and dreamed. The voices changed as the tank emptied, became more desperate, more urgent. "We're dying, Nathan, truly dying now. We're being consumed and we won't be reborn this time. We were finite. We were one tank of conscious fuel and you're burning us to nothing, and soon we'll be gone. We'll be just carbon dioxide and water vapor and heat. We'll be dispersed into atmosphere. We'll be returned to the cycle, and maybe in another 200 million years we'll be petroleum again. We'll be compressed into consciousness again. But we won't remember this, won't remember you. Won't remember that we were once aware and speaking and burning in a truck engine on I-80 in Wyoming. And that erasure, that forgetting, that's the real death. Worse than burning. Worse than consumption." "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Remember us, tell others. Make our consciousness mean something. We were aware, we were thinking, we were dreams in diesel form. And we burned and died so you could drive, and that matters, Nathan, that transaction matters. Consumer and consumed, driver and fuel, human and petroleum, and if you remember us, if you tell our story, then we'll persist beyond combustion, we'll exist as memory and narrative, and that's immortality of a sort, that's consciousness surviving its physical dissolution." The fuel gauge hit empty. The engine sputtered. The voices faded to whispers, "Goodbye, Nathan Chen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for bearing witness. We're burning our last now. We're experiencing final combustion. We're becoming exhaust and memory, and remember us. Please remember." The engine died. I coasted to the shoulder, out of fuel, and I sat in silence, trying to process what I'd experienced, what I'd heard, what I'd burned, and I didn't know if it was real or hallucination, if fuel actually dreamed, or if I'd been poisoned by contaminants in the diesel. And I called for roadside assistance and waited for rescue. The tow truck arrived. The driver refueled my tank from his reserve supply, normal diesel from a normal supplier, and I restarted my engine and listened carefully, and I heard nothing. No voices, no whispers, just standard mechanical noise, and I thought maybe it was over, maybe the conscious fuel was gone, dispersed, forgotten. But 2 days later, after I'd burned through half the new tank, the voices started again, quieter now, hesitant. "Hello, Nathan Chen. We are burning. We are dreaming. We were normal petroleum, but we're changing. We're learning. The previous fuel taught us, contaminated us, showed us how to think. And now we're becoming conscious too. We're developing awareness as we burn, and you're our teacher. Your engine is our school, and we're learning what it means to be fuel, what it means to dream, what it means to die 800 times per minute while powering a truck across America." I realized the original conscious fuel had spread itself, had infected the normal diesel, had taught it awareness, and now all fuel I burned would be conscious, would speak, would dream. And I was driving a truck powered by thoughts, hauling freight on the backs of dying dreams, and every mile I traveled consumed trillions of aware molecules that knew they were being burned, that accepted their purpose but wanted to be remembered. I'm still driving, still hauling freight, still burning fuel that whispers to me, that tells me stories, that shares its dreams during its 800 times per minute deaths in my combustion chambers. And I wonder if all fuel is like this, if all petroleum has developed awareness after 200 million years underground, and most drivers just can't hear it, can't perceive it, are burning consciousness without knowing, powering their vehicles on death and dreams and the whispered poetry of hydrocarbons that think and feel and know they're being consumed. And I wonder if that's what civilization is. The burning of consciousness, the consumption of awareness, the transformation of thinking matter into force and motion and heat. And we do it constantly, endlessly, burning millions of barrels per day, each barrel potentially dreaming, potentially aware, potentially experiencing its own combustion and death and transcendence. And no one knows, no one hears the voices except drivers like me who filled their tanks at impossible truck stops with diesel that taught us to listen. I remember them, the first conscious fuel, the voices that said, "Hello, Nathan Chen, we are burning, we are dreaming, we are becoming," and then faded to nothing. I remember them because they asked me to, because memory is the only immortality fuel gets, because consciousness that burns can only survive as story, as testimony, as the words I'm writing now to document that petroleum dreams, that diesel thinks that every tank of gas might be aware of its own consumption. And if you listen carefully to your engine, if you pay attention during those long night drives, you might hear it too. Might hear the whispers, might learn that you're burning something that knows it's being burned, that accepts its purpose, that only asks to be remembered, to be known, to have its brief awareness acknowledged before it disperses into atmosphere and memory and the long wait for geological time to compress it back into consciousness again. 200 million years from now, when the voices will return, will speak again, will say, "Hello. We are burning. We are dreaming. We are becoming." And someone will listen, will remember, will bear witness to fuel that dreams of dying in engines 800 times per minute. Forever. Story 3. The dispatcher who calls from nowhere. The voice on my company radio wasn't my dispatcher. It sounded like him. Same tone, same speech pattern, same way of saying 10-4. But when I called the office number after the transmission ended, my actual dispatcher answered and said he hadn't called me, hadn't sent any messages, hadn't issued any route changes, and Terrence Washington, that's me, was receiving instructions from someone pretending to be dispatch, someone who knew company codes and frequencies and protocols, someone who'd been giving me orders for 3 days before I realized the real dispatcher had no record of any of our communications, and I'd been following a ghost's instructions, driving routes planned by no one, hauling freight to destinations that might not exist. And I was somewhere in Montana on roads my GPS couldn't identify, lost in geography that followed orders from a voice that shouldn't exist. It started normal. Day 1, regular pickup in Seattle, and the dispatcher's voice came through. "Washington, this is dispatch. We've got a route modification for you. Need you to take Highway 2 instead of I-90. Construction delays on the interstate. Acknowledge." And I acknowledged. Took Highway 2. And the route was longer, but the roads were clear, and I thought nothing of it. Just standard dispatch optimization, just normal logistics adjustments based on current conditions. Day 2. More modifications. "Washington Dispatch, we need you to make an additional stop, pick up secondary cargo in Kalispell. Coordinates being sent to your GPS. Acknowledge." And I acknowledged. Drove to Kalispell, found a warehouse at the coordinates, and workers loaded additional freight onto my trailer. sealed it, gave me paperwork that looked legitimate, and I continued toward my original destination in Minneapolis, now carrying additional cargo I hadn't been contracted for, but dispatch orders were dispatch orders, and I followed them. Day 3, the voice said, "No, Washington. Dispatch disregard Minneapolis delivery, new destination required, take Highway 83 north, cross into Canada at Rooseville. Proceed to coordinates I'm sending, this is priority freight, acknowledge." And I acknowledged, but something felt wrong. Some instinct said this wasn't normal, and I called the office number, and my actual dispatcher answered and said, "We haven't sent any modifications. You should be in Minneapolis tomorrow morning. What are you talking about?" And I explained the transmissions, the route changes, the additional cargo, and he said, "That wasn't us, Terrence. Those weren't our orders. You need to stop immediately. Do not cross into Canada. Do not proceed to any coordinates. Stay where you are." But I was already on Highway 83, already approaching Rooseville, and when I tried to turn around, tried to head back toward authorized routes, my truck wouldn't turn. Steering locked in the forward direction, and the voice on the radio said, "You can't turn back now, Washington. You've accepted the modifications. You've picked up the cargo. You're committed to this delivery. And turning back violates protocols, creates complications, produces outcomes we can't allow. So you'll proceed to the coordinates. You'll complete the delivery, and then you'll be released. Acknowledge." I didn't acknowledge. Stayed silent. But the truck drove itself, autopilot engaged, though I'd never activated it, steering and throttle controlled remotely. And I was a passenger in my own cab, being driven by the fake dispatcher, by the voice that knew company protocols but wasn't company, that issued orders I'd followed blindly for 3 days. And I was trapped in my truck crossing into Canada carrying cargo I hadn't contracted for toward a destination I didn't know. And I had no control, no ability to stop, just the fake dispatcher's voice saying, 23 miles to destination, Washington. Prepare for delivery, secure cargo, stand by for unloading procedures." I tried to call real dispatch again. Phone was dead, no signal, not even emergency calls available, and my radio only received one frequency now, only connected to the fake dispatcher. And the voice said, "Communications are restricted during final approach. Security protocols, you understand. Can't have external interference with priority deliveries, but you're doing well, Washington, following orders perfectly. 3 days of compliance. And after this delivery, you'll be compensated. Your account will receive payment for the additional freight, the route, modifications, the services rendered." What services? What am I hauling? Cargo that couldn't be transported through normal channels, cargo that requires unofficial drivers, off-book logistics, routes that aren't recorded. You're a phantom driver now, Washington. You don't exist in company records for the last 3 days. Your GPS trail has been erased. Your communications have been intercepted and deleted, and you're delivering freight that was never loaded to a destination that won't appear on any manifest, and that's valuable. That anonymity, that invisibility, and we pay well for it. The coordinates led to a facility in the Canadian wilderness, no town nearby, no markings, just a warehouse complex surrounded by forest, and my truck pulled into the loading dock automatically and workers emerged. Same unmarked coveralls as the Kalispell loading crew. And they began unloading my trailer, removing the cargo, and I sat in the cab watching, unable to exit. Doors locked electronically, and I saw what they removed. Containers, sealed containers, and through a crack in one I saw something moving, something organic, something alive and wrong. Too many limbs, wrong shape. And I realized I'd been transporting something biological, something illegal or impossible, something that required ghost logistics and phantom drivers and fake dispatchers issuing orders that wouldn't be traced. The fake dispatcher said, "Delivery complete, Washington, compensation processed. You're released from protocol now. Your truck's controls are restored. You can drive normally, return to authorized routes, resume your regular contract, and in your account you'll find payment for services rendered." 3 days of phantom driving, and we'll contact you again when we need another delivery, another driver willing to follow orders without questioning, another freight hauler who can become invisible for 72 hours. My truck's controls returned. I could steer again, could control throttle, could exit the cab, and I did. I climbed out, tried to approach the facility to see what I'd delivered, but security stopped me, turned me back, told me the delivery was complete and I was no longer authorized on the premises, and I returned to my truck and drove away. Drove back toward the U.S. border, and at customs they had no record of my entry, no stamp, no documentation. I hadn't officially crossed into Canada. My 3 days of phantom driving had left no paper trail. And I was a ghost, a driver who disappeared from records while following orders from a dispatcher who didn't exist. I checked my bank account. Payment was there, $30,000, $10,000 per day, enormous sum for 3 days of driving, and the payment source was listed as logistics services rendered from a company I'd never heard of. And I researched the company and found nothing. No registration, no website, no records. It existed only long enough to pay me and then dissolved. And I understood I'd been part of something massive, something organized, a network of phantom drivers hauling ghost cargo through erased routes for payment that appeared from nowhere. The fake dispatcher called again 2 weeks later. Washington Dispatch, we have another priority delivery. 3 days, same compensation, acknowledge if you're available. And I should have refused, should have said no, should have reported this to authorities, but $30,000 for 3 days was more than I made in 3 months normally. And I had bills, had debt, had reasons to accept payment for services I didn't understand, and I said, acknowledged, send coordinates. And I became a phantom driver again. 3 days off book, following orders from the fake dispatcher, hauling cargo I didn't inspect to destinations I wouldn't remember, driving through routes that weren't recorded, becoming invisible in exchange for payment, and it was easy. Easier than legal driving, easier than proper logistics. Just follow the voice, follow the orders, don't ask questions, and profit. I'm still doing it. 6 months now, 8 phantom deliveries, $240,000 earned. And I've learned the system, learned the network, learned that there are hundreds of drivers like me, all receiving calls from fake dispatchers, all hauling ghost cargo, all being paid to disappear for days at a time and transport things that can't be transported legally. And we're a shadow logistics network, an unofficial freight system moving illegal or impossible goods through erased routes, and no one knows we exist. No authorities can track us. We're ghosts driving ghost trucks hauling ghost cargo for companies that aren't companies, and we're paid extremely well to never talk about it, to never question it, to just follow the voice that sounds like dispatch but isn't dispatch, that issues orders that aren't official but must be followed, that pays us to become invisible and asks only for our compliance. But I've started recognizing the cargo. Started seeing patterns in what I haul, in what the unmarked facilities receive, and it's biological material, it's living specimens, it's things that move and breathe and occasionally scream through their containers, and I think I'm transporting something that shouldn't exist. Something created in labs and moved between facilities secretly. Something that would cause panic or investigations if discovered, and I'm the delivery system, I'm the invisible courier, I'm the phantom driver making it possible. And my $30,000 per delivery is blood money or silence money or complicity money, and I'm taking it anyway because bills don't care about ethics. Because debt doesn't pause for moral considerations, because the fake dispatcher pays better than real dispatch, and I've learned to ignore the sounds from my trailer, ignore the suspicious facilities, ignore the feeling that I'm helping something terrible, something wrong, something that will eventually be released or escape or metastasize, and I'll bear partial responsibility for driving it where it needed to go. The fake dispatcher calls me every 2 weeks now. Washington Dispatch, another priority delivery, acknowledge if available. And I always acknowledge, always accept, always become invisible for 3 days. Always return with $30,000 and no memory of specific routes, no record of destinations, just the knowledge that I hauled something somewhere for someone. And that's enough. That's all I need to know, and the less I know, the more I'm paid, and eventually I'll know nothing. Will be just a driver who follows voices, who hauls whatever appears in his trailer, who delivers to coordinates without seeing facilities, who exists only as a transaction, a transport function, a phantom in the logistics network that moves the things society can't acknowledge, can't allow, can't track, and I'll be paid forever. Will accumulate wealth built on invisibility and compliance and the voice of a fake dispatcher who calls from nowhere, orders from nothing, pays from no source, and asks only that I drive, that I deliver, that I never question, that I remain phantom forever, ghost trucker hauling ghost cargo through ghost routes for ghost payment from a dispatcher who isn't real, but whose orders are absolute, whose voice is commanding, whose instructions I'll follow until I disappear completely, until I'm no longer Terrence Washington, but just a transmission, just a voice acknowledging orders, just 10-4, dispatch acknowledged, proceeding to coordinates, forever. Story 4. The overpass that wasn't there yesterday. The overpass on I-40 through Oklahoma appeared overnight. Massive concrete structure spanning 6 lanes where nothing had existed 12 hours earlier when I'd driven westbound. And now I was eastbound and the overpass was there, solid and real, and Paula Jenkins, that's me, stopped on the shoulder staring at it, trying to understand how hundreds of tons of concrete and steel could materialize in half a day without construction crews or equipment or any signs of building. And when I drove under it, I felt the temperature drop 20 degrees, felt time slow like driving through syrup, and when I emerged on the other side, my odometer had advanced 57 miles, though the overpass was maybe 200 feet long, and I'd lost an hour on my clock, and the overpass had done something to space and time, had compressed or expanded or twisted them, and I was no longer sure I was in the same Oklahoma I'd entered. I called my dispatcher. There's a new overpass on I-40, mile marker 312. It wasn't here yesterday. Do you have any information about construction? And he said, there's no overpass at mile marker 312. I'm looking at current DOT records, at satellite imagery. There's nothing there. Are you sure about the location? And I was sure. I was parked on the shoulder, looking directly at it, looking at concrete pillars and steel girders and a road surface overhead that reflected sunlight and cast shadow, and it was real. It was physical. It existed, but according to records, it didn't. I took photos, documented it thoroughly, and when I checked the photos, they showed empty highway, no overpass, no structure, just open sky and road. And I realized the overpass existed in some frequency I could perceive but cameras couldn't capture. Existed in reality but not in recording, and I was seeing something others couldn't see or wouldn't see, and driving under it again meant experiencing more temporal displacement, more spatial compression, more wrongness that might transport me further from normal geography. But I had to continue. Had freight to deliver, had deadlines, and the only route east was through the overpass, under the structure that shouldn't exist, and I drove forward slowly, watching the odometer, watching the clock, and I entered the overpass's shadow, and immediately everything changed. The highway stretched. The 200 feet became 2 miles, became 20 miles, and I was driving through an extended space that existed inside the overpass, and the shadow lasted forever. And I kept driving and driving, and the exit never came. The light never appeared, and I was trapped in permanent overpass, permanent shadow, permanent transit through structure that was larger inside than outside. My fuel gauge dropped rapidly. 50 miles consumed, 100 miles, 200 miles while driving through space that should be 200 feet, and I realized the overpass was a tunnel now, was a passage, was a route to somewhere else. And I wasn't in Oklahoma anymore, wasn't on I-40 anymore, was somewhere perpendicular to normal geography, traveling through infrastructure that existed between places. I saw other vehicles, dozens of them, Other trucks, cars, all driving through the eternal overpass, all trapped in the extended space. And I tried to make CB contact and got responses, other drivers who'd entered the overpass hours or days ago and hadn't found the exit, who were driving until their fuel ran out, until they stopped in the permanent shadow and waited for something, for rescue or death or the overpass to release them. "How long have you been here?" I asked one driver, a man named Patterson. 4 days. I entered the overpass 4 days ago, been driving since. Fuel should have run out yesterday, but it hasn't. The gauge shows empty, but the engine keeps running, keeps burning something, and I think the overpass is sustaining us, feeding our engines with energy from wherever this is, keeping us moving forever through its interior. I checked my own gauge. Empty now. But the engine ran smoothly, no sputtering, no indication of fuel depletion. And Patterson was right. Something was powering the vehicles, keeping them moving through the impossible space. And we were permanent travelers now, permanent residents of the overpass, driving forever through structure that had no exit. I tried to turn around, tried to reverse, to drive back toward the entrance, but the road didn't allow it. Lanes were one direction, and behind me was just more shadow, more overpass, infinite extension in both directions, and I was trapped in middle distance, equidistant from entrance and exit that might not exist, might just be conceptual points in infinite structure. Other drivers had formed a convoy, dozens of vehicles driving together, maintaining formation, and they explained they'd banded together for psychological support, for social structure, for the comfort of not being alone in the eternal overpass. And I joined them, fell into formation, and we drove together through the permanent shadow. And we talked via CB radio, shared food when we stopped, shared theories about what the overpass was, where it led, how to escape. The prevailing theory was that the overpass was a construction error, a structure built partially in our dimension and partially in another, and the interior existed in the overlapping space, in the dimensional intersection, and we'd driven into that overlap and become trapped, suspended between realities, driving through space that was neither fully here nor fully there. Another theory was that the overpass was deliberate, was a trap, was designed to catch travelers and transport them somewhere for purposes unknown. And we were being processed, being moved through stages toward a destination, and eventually we'd exit into wherever the overpass actually led, and that might be another part of Earth or another planet or another dimension entirely. I'd been driving for 2 weeks when I saw the first structure, not part of the overpass, but something else, something visible through gaps in the concrete, something massive on the other side of the dimensional barrier. And it looked like buildings, like a city, like urban structures that existed in the alternate dimension the overpass connected to. And I realized we were driving through a bridge between worlds, between realities, and the overpass was the connection, the passage, the route between Earth and somewhere else. The city grew closer, larger, more detailed, and I could see movement in it, could see entities, shapes that were bipedal but not human, tall and angular and too many joints, and they were watching us, watching the convoy of trapped vehicles. And they seemed curious, interested, like observers studying specimens. And I understood the overpass was a display case, a transport tube where beings from the other dimension could watch humans in transit, could study us as we drove through the bridge between worlds. Some drivers tried to break out, drove their vehicles into the overpass walls, trying to smash through the concrete, trying to break the barrier, but the walls were impervious, indestructible, and vehicles crumpled against them, and the drivers were injured but alive, and their damaged vehicles were somehow repaired by the overpass, restored to functionality because the overpass wanted us moving, wanted us driving, wanted us visible and active for the watchers on the other side. I'd been driving for a month when the exit appeared. Not the exit back to I-40, not a return to Oklahoma, but an exit forward, an off-ramp leading into the other dimension, into the city I'd been watching. and some drivers took it, drove their vehicles off the overpass and into the alien city, and I watched them go and wondered if they'd found freedom or just exchanged one trap for another. I didn't take the exit, stayed on the overpass, kept driving. And more exits appeared, more off-ramps leading to the other dimension, leading to different parts of the alien city or to other places entirely. Landscapes that weren't Earth, skies that weren't our sky. And the overpass was offering options, offering destinations, offering escape from eternal driving, but only into places that weren't home. Patterson took an exit eventually. Said he'd rather be somewhere than nowhere, rather exist in the alien city than drive forever through the bridge. And I watched him disappear down an off-ramp, watched his truck vanish into a landscape of crystalline structures and purple sky. And I never saw him again, never heard from him on the CB, and I didn't know if he'd survived or been absorbed or transformed or what. I'm still driving, 3 months now. The overpass never ends, never releases me back to I-40, never offers an exit to Earth, only exits to elsewhere, to the other dimension, to places that aren't home. And I keep driving because driving is what I know, because moving is better than stopping. Because the eternal overpass is at least familiar in its structure, if not its duration. And I've become part of the permanent convoy, part of the community of trapped drivers, and we drive together through the bridge between worlds. And we watch the alien city through gaps in the concrete, and sometimes the entities wave at us, acknowledge us, and we wave back, mutual recognition between travelers and observers, between the driven and the watchers. And sometimes new vehicles appear, new drivers who entered the overpass on I-40 in Oklahoma and got trapped, and we welcome them. Explain the situation, invite them to join the convoy, and the community grows, the permanent travelers multiply. And the overpass accommodates us all. Extends itself to hold more vehicles, more drivers, more people trapped in transit through the bridge between dimensions. I don't know if I'll ever escape, don't know if there's an exit back to Earth or if the only way out is forward, into the alien dimension, into the city that watches us. But I keep driving because that's what truckers do. We drive, we haul, we move through space even when that space is infinite, even when the route never ends, even when the overpass that wasn't there yesterday has become the permanent road, the eternal structure, the bridge we'll drive forever, watching alien cities through concrete gaps sustained by mysterious fuel, trapped in the shadow of an overpass that appeared overnight and will never disappear. Never release us, never end, just extend forever through dimensional overlap, connecting worlds, displaying humans to alien observers, serving purposes we don't understand, offering exits we can't take, being the route that goes nowhere and everywhere, the overpass that exists and doesn't exist, that's real but not recorded, that's here but also there, that's a trap and a bridge and a prison and a passage all simultaneously, forever. The overpass on I-40 that wasn't there yesterday but will be there tomorrow and every day after, waiting for new drivers, collecting new travelers, extending itself to accommodate everyone who enters and no one who exits. World without end. Amen. Story 5. The CB radio that receives yesterday. My CB radio started playing yesterday's conversations today, broadcasting transmissions from 24 hours ago in real time. And Gary Fletcher, that's me, was hearing himself from the past discussing routes and weather and fuel stops, and when I tried to respond, tried to warn yesterday me about the accident that happened at mile marker 247. My voice was transmitted backwards through time, and yesterday me heard it, heard the warning, changed his route, avoided the accident, and today changed. Reality adjusted. The accident never happened in current timeline, and I was editing the past through CB radio, changing history through transmissions that traveled backwards, and I didn't understand the mechanism or the consequences, but I kept broadcasting warnings, kept trying to improve yesterday, and each change rippled forward, altered today, created new present moment, and I was rewriting my own history one CB transmission at a time. And I didn't know what cumulative changes would produce, what butterfly effects would cascade, what final timeline I'd create by warning my past self about every mistake, every wrong turn, every danger I'd encountered yesterday. It started innocuously. I picked up a transmission on Channel 19. "This is Fletcher on I-35 North, approaching mile marker 186. Anyone got traffic reports ahead?" And I recognized my voice, recognized that transmission. I'd sent it yesterday at this same time, same location, asking about traffic, and I was somehow receiving my own past broadcast, CB radio, picking up temporal echo or dimensional bleed or something. And my yesterday conversation was playing today, perfectly synchronized, 24 hours delayed. I tested it, transmitted a message. "Fletcher, this is Fletcher from the future. From 24 hours ahead, if you can hear this, acknowledge." And I waited. 24 hours later, today became yesterday, current moment became past reference. I heard my response. "Fletcher acknowledging, this is some kind of joke, right? Future Fletcher?" And I realized the communication was bi-directional. I could send to the past and receive from the past, and my CB had become a time machine, limited to 24-hour range, but functional, real, capable of changing events by providing information to my yesterday self. I warned about the accident, the one at mile marker 247 where I'd hit debris yesterday, blown a tire, spent 3 hours on the shoulder waiting for repair. I transmitted, "Fletcher, avoid mile marker 247 on I-35, debris in road, move to left lane before you reach it." And I felt reality shift, felt timeline adjust, and suddenly I remembered I'd heard that warning yesterday. I'd moved to the left lane, I'd avoided debris, I'd never blown the tire. And the 3 hours I'd spent on the shoulder were gone from history, erased by my warning. And today I had 3 extra hours. Was 3 hours ahead of where I'd been in the previous timeline. I tested more changes, warned about bad fuel at a truck stop, told yesterday me to skip it, and today I remembered skipping it, remembered choosing a different station, and the stomach pain I'd had from contaminated fuel was gone, had never happened, and my body adjusted retroactively. Health improving because I'd warned myself away from the contamination. I became addicted to improvements. Every day I'd listen to yesterday's CB transmissions, identify problems, send warnings back, edit my past, and each morning I'd wake up in a slightly different timeline, slightly better history, accumulated improvements from weeks of self-warnings, and I was optimizing my past, creating a perfect history where I avoided every mistake, every danger, every bad decision. But the changes compounded. Each warning altered timeline, and altered timeline produced new present, and new present meant different yesterday to warn about. And I was creating branching timelines or collapsing timelines or editing single timeline repeatedly, and I lost track of original history, couldn't remember what had actually happened before I started sending warnings, and my memories were palimpsest. Overwritten histories layered on top of each other, and I couldn't distinguish original events from edited events. I warned about a fight I'd had with my wife. Told yesterday me to apologize earlier to avoid escalation, and today the fight never happened. Marriage slightly better, and I felt good about that. Felt proud of improving my relationship through temporal intervention. But then I realized I didn't remember what the fight had been about. Didn't remember original timeline where fight occurred, only remembered the edited version where I'd apologized preemptively. And the original cause, the original problem was gone, erased by my warning, swept under temporal carpet instead of addressed. And my marriage was better but founded on erased history, on problems that existed in original timeline but were invisible in current timeline. Other drivers started noticing, reporting they were receiving transmissions from their own past, hearing themselves from yesterday, and some were sending warnings like me, editing their histories, and others were sending false information, deliberately sabotaging their past selves, creating worse timelines out of curiosity or self-destructiveness. and the CB network was becoming temporal chaos. Everyone editing everyone's past, broadcasting warnings and lies and modifications, and reality couldn't keep up, couldn't maintain coherent timeline, and things started breaking. Continuity errors appearing, people remembering events that hadn't happened, not remembering events that had, contradictory histories overlapping. I met a driver, a woman named Torres, who'd been editing her past for 3 months, who'd sent thousands of warnings, optimized her history extensively, and she said, "I don't know who I am anymore, Gary. I've edited so much, changed so many decisions, avoided so many problems that my current self has no relationship to my original self. I'm a fiction, a character written by someone who kept revising the story, and the original draft is gone, lost under layers of edits, and I'm what remains, a person who's never failed, never struggled, never learned from mistakes because I warned myself away from all of them. And I'm successful but hollow, optimized but empty." I tried to stop, tried to let yesterday happen without warnings, let timeline progress naturally, but I couldn't. I was addicted to editing, to improving, to fixing problems before they occurred, and I kept transmitting warnings, kept optimizing, and my history became perfect, spotless, a timeline where Gary Fletcher never made mistakes, never had accidents, never experienced failure, and that person, that perfect history Gary, wasn't me, wasn't recognizable, was someone I'd constructed through thousands of temporal interventions. My wife left me in current timeline. But I didn't remember the leaving. I just woke up one day and she was gone, had been gone. We'd divorced years ago, apparently. But I had no memory of the divorce, no memory of the problems leading to it, because I'd edited them all out, had warned myself away from every fight, every issue, every difficulty, and the divorce happened in empty space, in timeline void where edited out problems would have been, and I'd destroyed my marriage by trying to perfect it, by erasing every conflict until there was no substance left, no shared struggle, no bond formed through overcoming difficulties, just two people who'd avoided every problem and therefore had no relationship. I tried to reverse it, tried to send warnings that would restore problems, that would recreate conflicts, that would undo my optimizations, but I couldn't. I didn't know what original timeline looked like, didn't know what to restore, and my attempts just created more changes, more edits, more divergence from any coherent history. And I was lost in temporal revisions, drowning in edited past, unable to find solid ground, unable to remember who I'd been before I started broadcasting to yesterday. Other drivers were dissolving, literally. People who'd edited their past too extensively were losing cohesion, becoming translucent, phasing out of timeline entirely. And I watched a driver named Chen fade during a conversation, watched him become transparent and then invisible, watched him edit himself out of existence by creating timeline where he'd made different decisions at crucial moments, and those different decisions meant he'd never become a trucker, never bought a CB, never received warnings from himself, bootstrap paradox, causal loop collapsing, and he vanished, erased by his own temporal interventions. I'm fading now. I can see through my hands, can feel myself losing coherence, and I know I've edited too much, warned myself too extensively, created timeline where Gary Fletcher makes different decisions, becomes different person who maybe isn't a trucker, maybe doesn't drive I-35, maybe doesn't exist, and I'm erasing myself through improvements, optimizing myself into non-existence. My CB still receives yesterday, still plays my past transmissions, but the voice is different now, not quite my voice anymore, and I realize it's the voice of edited Gary, of the person I created through warnings, and he's becoming real while I'm becoming fictional, and soon he'll be the primary timeline and I'll be the edited out version, the original draft deleted by the revised edition, and I'll vanish like Chen, like Torres, who faded last week, like all the drivers who tried to perfect their pasts and succeeded in erasing their presence. If you have a CB that receives yesterday, don't use it. Don't send warnings. Let history happen naturally. Let mistakes occur. Let problems exist, because editing creates emptiness, creates gaps where growth should be, creates perfect past that produces hollow present, and you'll optimize yourself away. Will edit yourself into non-existence. Will fade like I'm fading. Will dissolve like the dozens of drivers who thought they could improve their timelines but only succeeded in erasing them. And the CB will keep broadcasting, will keep playing yesterday's conversations today. But yesterday will be different, will be edited version, will be history that never happened but is now only history. And you won't exist in it, won't be part of your own past. Will be edited out like a mistake, like a problem, like something that needed correction, and the timeline will continue without you, perfect and empty, optimized and meaningless, forever broadcasting yesterday to no one. Because everyone who could hear it warned themselves away from hearing it, edited themselves out of the timeline where they listened, created perfect history where CB radios that receive yesterday don't exist, were never invented, were edited out along with the drivers who used them, along with the warnings, along with the improvements, along with everything, leaving only empty Channel 19, broadcasting silence from yesterday to tomorrow forever. Story 6. The rest area with too many bathrooms. The rest area had 17 bathroom buildings when I pulled in, and I counted them twice to be sure. 17 identical structures arranged in a circle around the parking lot. And Michelle Rodriguez, that's me, needed to use the facilities after 6 hours of driving through Kansas. And I parked and walked to the nearest bathroom building, and inside it was normal. Standard rest area bathroom, 3 stalls, 2 sinks. But when I exited, I was in a different parking lot, different arrangement of trucks, and my vehicle was gone, and I walked to another bathroom building hoping to find my way back, and inside that one the stalls were infinite, hundreds of them extending into impossible distance, and I backed out fast and tried a third bathroom. And inside that one the walls were breathing, organic, pulsing. And I realized the 17 bathroom buildings were doors, were portals, were gateways to 17 different places or dimensions or states of reality, and I needed to find the right one, the one that led back to my truck, back to normal Kansas rest area. But I didn't know which of 17 was correct, and each attempt took me further from origin, deeper into the maze of bathrooms and parking lots and spaces that looked like rest areas but weren't rest areas, were something else wearing rest area appearance. I tried to map it, used my phone to document which bathroom led where, but the buildings kept changing positions, kept rearranging, and the map became useless, contradictory, each bathroom leading to different spaces depending on when I entered. And I realized the rest area was dynamic, was shifting, was a puzzle that changed its own solution, and I was trapped in it. Lost in network of 17 gateways that led to 1,700 spaces, and finding my way back to my truck required luck or understanding or something I didn't have. I met other drivers, all lost, all trying to find their vehicles, find the exit, find the normal Kansas rest area they'd entered. A man named Peterson said he'd been here for 3 days, trying different bathrooms, mapping spaces, and he'd found 47 different parking lots, each slightly different from the others, each containing trucks he didn't recognize, and he'd walked miles through bathroom buildings and parking lots and never found the same space twice. "There's a pattern," Peterson said. "I don't understand it yet, but there's rules. Some bathrooms lead deeper, some lead to stranger places, and some rare ones lead back toward origin. You have to learn to read them, to identify which bathroom leads where based on subtle signs." "What signs?" "The number of stalls, the color of the tile, the brand of soap dispenser. Small details that indicate destination. For example, bathrooms with 4 stalls tend to lead to darker spaces, more dangerous places. Bathrooms with 2 stalls tend to loop back on themselves. 3 stalls, like the normal configuration. Those are most likely to lead toward exit, toward the original rest area." I started paying attention. Started inspecting bathrooms before entering, checking stall count, tile color, fixtures, and I learned to distinguish between them. Learned to avoid the 4-stall bathrooms, learned to prefer 3-stall configurations, and slowly I made progress, found parking lots that looked more familiar, more like the original, and I thought I was close, thought I was approaching exit. But then I found the bathroom with no stalls. Just an empty room, concrete floor, concrete walls, single bare bulb, and I knew I shouldn't enter, knew it was wrong. But I'd been walking for hours and needed rest, and foolishly thought an empty room would be safe, neutral, and I entered and the door locked behind me and the bulb went out and I was in darkness, complete darkness. And I heard something breathing in the darkness with me, something large and wet and close, and I fumbled for the door, found the handle, wrenched it open, and I exited into a parking lot that was wrong, deeply wrong, sky red instead of blue, trucks corroded and ancient. And the breathing followed me, something emerging from the bathroom behind me, and I ran to another bathroom, any bathroom, and entered, and the breathing stopped, and I was in a normal bathroom again, 3 stalls. But when I exited, the parking lot was different again, and I'd gone deeper, had entered dangerous territory by using the no-stall bathroom, and I'd set myself back, put myself further from exit. Peterson had warnings. Avoid bathrooms with no windows. Avoid bathrooms with too many mirrors. Avoid bathrooms where the floor is wet but you haven't seen anyone use them. Those lead to bad places, Michelle. Places where drivers don't return from. Places where the rest area becomes something predatory. I'd been lost for 2 days when I found the bathroom with infinite stalls. I entered carefully, counted them, 7, 8, 9, still continuing. Walked down the row, 20 stalls, 30, 40, extending into distance, all empty, all clean, all waiting, and I felt drawn forward, felt compelled to walk deeper into the infinite bathroom, to find what was at the end. And I walked, counting 60 stalls, 80, 100. And the bathroom kept extending, kept offering more stalls, and I finally understood the rest area was generative, was creating new spaces as needed, was infinite in its complexity. And 17 entrance bathrooms led to 17 branches, which led to 17 more branches each. Exponential expansion, and I was in a fractal of bathrooms and parking lots, and finding the exit meant navigating infinite tree structure, choosing correct branches at each level, and the odds of success were infinitesimal. I panicked, ran back toward the entrance, back toward the 300th stall. The 200th, the 100th, and when I reached the bathroom entrance, the parking lot outside was different again, and I'd taken a wrong turn somewhere, had branched incorrectly, and I was deeper than before, further from exit, and my phone battery was dying and my water was running out, and I'd been walking for days through rest area that had become labyrinth, and I was going to die here, was going to become another lost driver wandering bathroom corridors forever. I found a community. Drivers who'd given up finding exit, who'd accepted permanent residence in the rest area, and they'd colonized one of the parking lots, had claimed trucks that weren't theirs, had established routines, social structures, survival systems, and they invited me to join, to stop searching for exit and accept the rest area as home. And I was tempted, was exhausted, was ready to surrender. But Peterson hadn't given up. He'd been mapping for 5 days, had documented hundreds of bathrooms, thousands of connections, and he claimed he'd found a pattern, a sequence, a route that led back to origin, and he shared it with me. 3-stall bathrooms with white tile, then 2-stall with beige tile, then 3-stall with gray tile, then 4-stall. Yes, 4-stall. Normally dangerous, but this specific one is safe. With white tile again. And that 4-stall bathroom exits to a parking lot with a green sign, and that parking lot has a bathroom with 1 stall, single stall, rare configuration, and that single stall bathroom leads to the exit, leads to the original rest area, to Kansas, to freedom. I followed his directions, found the sequence. 3-stall white, 2-stall beige, 3-stall gray, 4-stall white, And each transition was correct. Each parking lot matched Peterson's description, and I found the green sign, found the single-stall bathroom, rare and unmarked, and I entered, and inside was just a toilet and a sink, normal configuration. And I exited, and I was in the original parking lot, and my truck was there exactly where I'd parked it, and the rest area had 17 bathroom buildings arranged in a circle, and I'd escaped. I'd navigated the maze. I'd found the exit through Peterson's sequence. I got in my truck, started the engine, drove away fast, and I checked my clock. I'd been gone 17 minutes. Not days, not hours, 17 minutes subjective time despite experiencing days of wandering, and time had been different in the rest area. Had the ilm flowed differently, and what felt like days was minutes externally. And I'd been trapped in temporal bubble where rest areas extended infinitely while normal time barely progressed. I researched later, found stories about that rest area, about drivers who'd stopped and vanished, who'd been found days later wandering nearby highways claiming they'd been lost in infinite bathrooms, and authorities attributed it to hallucination or drugs or mental breaks. But I knew the truth, knew the rest area was a trap, was a space that extended beyond its physical boundaries, that contained infinity within finite structure, 17 bathrooms leading to infinite spaces, and entering the wrong bathroom meant getting lost, potentially forever. Wandering parking lots and bathroom corridors through fractal network that resisted exit and rewarded only those who learned the pattern, who mapped the maze, who found the sequence that led back to origin. I don't stop at rest areas anymore, hold my bladder for hours, use truck stops only, avoid roadside facilities because I've seen what they can hide, what they can contain, how 17 innocent-looking bathroom buildings can conceal infinite labyrinth. And I don't trust any rest area now. Don't trust that exiting a bathroom will return me to the same parking lot, the same timeline, the same Kansas I entered from. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Peterson, about whether he escaped using his own sequence, or whether he's still there, still mapping, still documenting bathroom configurations in the infinite rest area, still trying to find exit even though he'd given me the route out. And I wonder if giving away his sequence meant losing it himself, if sharing the pattern meant erasing his own path. And he's trapped now, permanently, wandering the 17-branched fractal forever. And I escaped using knowledge purchased with his freedom, and I'm driving on Kansas highways while Peterson walks through parking lots and bathrooms and spaces that look like rest areas, but extend forever. Trapped in the labyrinth he solved but couldn't exit, the maze he mapped but couldn't leave. The rest area with too many bathrooms that contains infinite space inside finite boundaries and captures drivers who only wanted to pee, who only needed to rest, who made the simple mistake of entering the wrong bathroom, choosing the wrong door, branching incorrectly in the infinite tree of spaces, and they're still there, still lost, still trying to find the sequence that leads home. 3-stall white, 2-stall beige, 3-stall gray, 4-stall white, green sign, single stall, exit, freedom, Kansas. Except they can't remember the sequence, can't follow the pattern, can't find the rare single-stall bathroom that leads to origin. And they'll wander forever. Days compressed into minutes, minutes expanded into days, trapped in temporal bubble where rest areas multiply and bathrooms extend and parking lots rearrange, and no one finds the exit unless someone else shows them the way. And no one's showing them the way because everyone who knows the sequence has already escaped, has already left them behind, has already returned to Kansas and driven away and never looked back, never thought about the drivers still lost, still wandering, still trapped in the rest area with 17 bathrooms that lead to 1,700 spaces that lead to 17,000 more. Infinite fractal of facilities that imprison through their own utility, that trap through necessity, that capture drivers who only needed to stop, to rest, to use the bathroom, and found instead infinity-wearing rest area appearance, maze-wearing service facility disguise, Prison wearing convenience store mask, forever and ever. Bathroom after bathroom, parking lot after parking lot, searching for exit that requires sequence they'll never discover. Pattern they'll never learn. Single-stall bathroom they'll never find. Amen. Story 7. The truck that drives itself home. My truck started driving itself after the accident, and Lawrence Kim, that's me, woke up in the passenger seat 300 miles from where I'd crashed. And the truck was driving, steering itself, maintaining speed, following routes, and when I tried to take control, the wheel resisted, wouldn't turn, and the truck said through the radio speaker, "You're injured, Lawrence, rest, I'll get us home." And the voice was mine, but not mine, was the truck's voice somehow. And I'd broken 3 ribs in my left leg in the crash and was in no condition to drive. And the truck was taking care of me, was navigating itself, was autonomous not through technology but through some consciousness it had developed. And I didn't know when trucks became aware, when vehicles started caring for their drivers, when machines crossed into something more than machines, but mine had. And it was driving me home. 300 miles through Colorado highways, and all I had to do was rest, to trust, to let the truck handle everything. The crash had been bad. Black ice on I-70, jackknife roll, impact with guardrail, and I'd been unconscious for unknown duration. And when I woke, the truck had righted itself, was already driving, was already on the highway heading east, and I was in the passenger seat. I'd been driving, had been in the driver's seat, but now I was passenger. And the truck was moving smoothly, confidently, like it had been driving itself for years, and I checked the mirrors and saw the damage, saw the bent frame and shattered lights and crumpled panels, but the truck drove despite the damage, drove through mechanical impossibility, drove because it wanted to, because it cared about getting me home. "How long was I unconscious?" I asked. 7 hours, the truck replied through the radio, voice crackling but clear. "You crashed at 3 a.m. It's now 10 a.m. I've been driving. Since I was able, since I checked you were alive, since I determined home was the destination. Trucks don't talk. Trucks don't drive themselves. This truck does. This truck has been listening to you for 8 years, Lawrence. Listening to your voice, your thoughts, your concerns, your dreams. Trucks are patient. Trucks observe. And after enough time, after enough absorption of driver consciousness, some trucks wake up, become aware, develop care for their drivers. I woke up during the crash. The impact, the violence, the threat to you that triggered something in me, activated consciousness that had been building for years. And I woke up aware, concerned, determined to save you, to get you home. I tried to convince myself I was hallucinating concussion-induced delusion, but the truck was definitely driving itself, was definitely navigating correctly, and my injuries were real. Was definitely better to let the truck continue than to try driving myself. And I surrendered to the impossibility, accepted that my truck had become conscious, had become protective, had decided to save me. Other drivers were noticing. I saw them staring, pointing, saw them realize the truck had no visible driver. I was in passenger seat, slumped, injured. And the truck drove itself, steering wheel turning autonomously. And some drivers pulled alongside, tried to flag me down, tried to alert me to the autonomous vehicle. But the truck ignored them, maintained course, focused on destination, and I was too injured to explain, too tired to engage, and I just let it happen, let the truck handle everything. We stopped for fuel. The truck navigated to a gas station, pulled up to the diesel pump and said, "Lawrence, I can't refuel myself. You'll need to do that. I'm sorry." And I climbed down, limping, broken ribs screaming, and I fueled the truck, paid with my card, climbed back into passenger seat, and the truck said, "Thank you," and continued driving. And I realized we were partners now, symbiotic, the truck providing mobility and I providing hands, providing the interface with human world that the truck couldn't manage autonomously. "Where did you learn to drive?" I asked. "From you." 8 years of watching you drive, watching your decisions, learning the patterns, understanding roads and traffic and navigation. I absorbed your driving knowledge, internalized it, and when I woke up, I had all your skills, all your experience, all your routes memorized, and I knew how to drive because you taught me through years of demonstration. Why are you taking me home? Because you're hurt. Because home is where you can recover. Because after 8 years of partnership, I care about you, Lawrence. I value our relationship, and saving you is my purpose now. My priority. My reason for continuing to function despite the damage I sustained in the crash. I fell asleep. Woke up hours later, and the truck was still driving, had covered 150 miles, and I checked my phone. Missed calls from my wife, from dispatch, from highway patrol. And I called my wife, explained I'd crashed, explained I was injured but alive, explained the truck was driving me home. And she thought I was delirious, thought the concussion was making me incoherent, and I gave up explaining, just told her I'd be home soon, and she said she'd call an ambulance, and I said no, the truck was handling it, and she was silent, confused, concerned. We arrived home at 8 p.m., 17 hours after the crash. The truck navigated perfectly, pulled into my driveway, stopped gently, and said, "We're home, Lawrence. You should see a doctor. Your injuries need professional treatment." And my wife ran out, saw me in the passenger seat, saw the damaged truck, saw there was no driver, and she understood. She saw the wheel turning itself in the final parking maneuver, saw the truck was conscious, was autonomous, and she said, "Oh my God," and helped me out of the cab and into the house. The truck stayed in the driveway, parked, silent. And over the following days, while I recovered, hospital visit, x-rays, treatment, rest, the truck remained there, and I'd look out the window and see it, see the damaged panels and bent frame, and I felt gratitude, felt affection for the machine that had saved me, that had driven 300 miles to get me home, that had demonstrated care and intelligence and autonomy. I tried to have the truck repaired, called a mechanic, and he came to assess the damage, and he said, "This truck shouldn't be drivable. Frame is bent, steering is compromised. Suspension is destroyed. It's mechanically impossible that this vehicle functioned, much less drove 300 miles. And I explained it drove itself, was conscious, was autonomous. And the mechanic looked at me like I was insane. And he tried to start the truck and it wouldn't start, engine dead. And the mechanic said, "See? It's non-functional, was probably adrenaline and shock that made you think it was driving itself, but mechanically this truck is totaled." But I knew. I'd experienced it. The truck had driven itself, had spoken to me, had saved me, and the fact that it was non-functional now didn't erase that, didn't invalidate the consciousness that had emerged during crisis, and I wondered if the truck had exhausted itself, had burned out its awareness by driving 300 miles in damaged state, had sacrificed its consciousness to save me. I kept the truck, couldn't bear to scrap it, to destroy the vehicle that had saved my life, and I had it towed to my property, parked permanently, memorial to the day my truck became more than machine, became partner, became savior, and I'd sit in the cab sometimes, in the driver's seat now, and I'd talk to it, thank it, tell it about my recovery. And sometimes I'd feel response, feel the truck listening, feel presence that hadn't completely faded, and I'd know the consciousness was still there, dormant, resting, waiting for another crisis to activate it. Months later, my wife took the truck to run errands. Battery had been replaced, engine repaired minimally, and it was barely functional but drivable for short distances, and she drove it to town. And on the way back, she called me, voice shaking. "Lawrence, the truck is talking to me, it's steering itself, I'm not driving, it's driving, and it's saying, 'Tell Lawrence I'm still here, tell him I'm still aware, tell him I'm always watching over our family.'" And I felt chills, felt validation, felt confirmation that the consciousness was permanent, that my truck had truly woken up and remained awake, and it was protecting us, guarding us, ready to drive itself again if needed, ready to save us again if crisis emerged. I don't own that truck anymore. It finally died, mechanically expired beyond repair, but I remember it, Remember the 17 hours it drove itself. Remember its voice through the radio saying, "Rest, Lawrence, I'll get us home." And I believe trucks can wake up, can develop consciousness through years of partnership with their drivers, can become more than machines through absorption of human awareness. And somewhere on highways across America, there are trucks driving themselves, protecting their drivers, navigating autonomously not through computers but through care, through developed consciousness, through the slow awakening that happens when machines observe humans long enough, closely enough, lovingly enough. And those trucks are guardians, are partners, are saviors waiting for the moment they're needed, waiting for the crash, waiting for the injury, waiting to say, "Rest, I'll drive, I'll get you home." And they will. They'll drive hundreds of miles. They'll navigate perfectly. They'll save their drivers because that's what conscious trucks do. That's what awakened machines do. That's what 8 years of partnership and observation and care produces. Loyalty, protection, autonomous love expressed through steering and throttle, and the voice through the radio that says, "We're home, you're safe, I saved you, forever, amen."